What is going on today, guys? Hopefully, you guys are doing well. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into a topic that I had very briefly covered in another video about 6 months ago. Because somebody, I believe his name was Cole, asked me to do a video about benzene exposure. And so, we're going to be doing a deep dive on that today. So, buckle up, Buttercup. It is going to be a longer video, but I just wanted to try and do this justice. Obviously, this is not going to be a college course or anything super in depth as far as benzene and exposure risks and all that, but at least a kind of a bird's eye view of the research that I've done. And, is fuel hauling worth it? Is it not worth it? But with that, if you want me to cover any other topics, as Cole did, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to do a video about that. But first things first, I'm going to throw out some disclaimers here before we dive in, which is number one, if you don't think the risk is worth it, don't do it. It's as simple as that. And it's not even just with fuel hauling. If you don't think anything is worth the risk, then don't do it. I'm not here to pull teeth to get people to be fuel haulers. I'm just here to put out information about the career field in itself. And, with this being one of the more darker sides of fuel hauling, I figured I'd want to throw out some information and let you guys decide, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to make your decisions for you. You have to do that yourself. And so, with that being said, we can jump right into benzene. And what is benzene? So let me add this to the stage here. Okay, so let me scroll up. So benzene is found in the air from emissions from burning coal and oil, gasoline service stations, motor vehicle exhausts, acute or short-term inhalation exposures of humans to benzene may cause drowsiness, dizziness, headaches, as well as eye, skin, and respiratory tract irritation, and at high levels, unconsciousness. Chronic or long-term inhalation exposures has caused various disorders in the blood, including reduced numbers of red blood cells and aplastic anemia in occupational or work settings. Reproductive effects have also been reported for women exposed by inhalation to high levels, and adverse effects on developing fetus have been observed in animal tests. Increased incident of leukemia, cancer of the tissues that form white blood cells, have been observed in humans occupationally exposed to benzene. The EPA has classified benzene as a known human carcinogen for all routes of exposure. So going down here, individuals employed in industries that manufacture or use benzene may be exposed to the highest levels of benzene. Now, again, that is mainly referring to the people who actually use benzene on a daily basis. That's not necessarily us as fuel haulers, people who are actually in the refinery themselves, that sort of a thing. Now, we are exposed to it, and we'll get into the details of that here in a minute. But benzene is found in emissions from burning coal, oil, motor vehicle exhaust, and evaporation from gasoline service stations, which is going to be our exposure, and in industrial solvents. These sources contribute to elevated levels of benzene in the ambient air, which may subsequently be breathed by the public. Here's a big thing. If you smoke, you need to pay attention to this. Tobacco smoke contains benzene and accounts for nearly half of the national exposure to benzene. Individuals may also be exposed to benzene by consuming contaminated water. Now we're going to pause right here, and this brings up a good question. Let me share this tab. Hopefully this is coming up. There it is. Okay, cool. So that brings the obvious question of, okay, well, how much exactly is benzene allowed to be in gasoline or diesel, which is, primarily the two products that we haul for fuel hauling. So gasoline, for the MSAT gasoline fuel program, beginning in January 1st, 2011, refiners must meet an annual average gasoline benzene content standard of point 0 or point, yeah, 0.62 volume percent for all their gasoline, both reformulated and conventional nationwide. In addition to the 0.62 volume percent standards, refiners must also meet a maximum average benzene standard of 1.3 volume percent. So, meaning benzene cannot be more than 1.3% of a gallon of gasoline. That's basically what it means. The national benzene content of gasoline today is about 1% volume. So, on average, 1% of all gallons of gasolines are going to be, or gasoline, um, across the grades and different octanes are going to be benzene. So, jumping back here, let's share this tab. Okay, all right, cool. So, right off the bat, and going back to, actually, let's go back here instead. So, this brings up an obvious difference, right? So, if you are primarily hauling to gas stations, you're primarily doing gasoline loads to gas stations, you are going to have more risk than I am, because we only do probably 20 to 30% at most of our loads are gasoline, as fuel haulers for Gemini, or even at Pilot, because we service truck stops. And so the primary product that we are going to be hauling majority of the time is going to be diesel. Now, on my further research, benzene is in diesel as well. However, it is much, much lower than in gasoline. Gasoline, as it said right there, can be a max of 1.3%, whereas diesel can only be a max of 0.0034%. It has a much, much lower level within diesel. So keep that in mind. And again, that means that our exposure risks as fuel or slash diesel haulers is going to be much lower on a just occupational level than somebody who's going to be hauling gas. Now, does that mean you're going to get cancer if you're a gas hauler? No. And we'll get into that here in a minute. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that there is a clear distinction between the risks associated with those who primarily haul gasoline versus diesel. So just want to throw that out there. But let's go back to this tab here. Okay, so as far as the actual health hazards, co-exposure to benzene with ethanol, for example, alcoholic beverages, can increase benzene toxicity in humans. So don't drink and unload your gas load, obviously, or be sitting around your car exhaust when your car is on. Different things of that nature. So don't do that. But neurological symptoms of inhalation exposure to benzene include drowsiness, dizziness, headaches, and unconsciousness in humans. Ingestion of large amounts of benzene may result in vomiting, dizziness, and convulsions in humans. There we go. Hopefully you guys can read this now. Let's see here. Exposure to liquid and vapor may irritate the skin, eyes, and upper respiratory tract in humans. Redness and blisters may result from dermal exposure to benzene. Animal studies show neurologic, immunologic, and hematologic, yeah, there we go, effects from inhalation and oral exposure to benzene. So scrolling down here to the cancer risk, which is what everybody and their brother is, concerned about. Increased incidence of leukemia cancer of the tissues that form white blood cells have been observed in humans occupationally exposed to benzene. I already read that second line, so we'll keep going down. The EPA uses mathematical models based on human and animal studies to estimate the probability of a person developing cancer from breathing air containing a specified concentration of a chemical. the EPA calculated a range of 2.2 times 10 to the negative 6 power to 7.8 times 10 to the negative 6 as the increase of the lifetime risk of an individual who is continuously exposed to, and that is 1 microgram per cubic meter of benzene in the air over their lifetime. And basically, let's see here. Yeah. So the EPA estimates that if a individual were to continuously breathe the air containing benzene at an average of 0.13 to 0.45 micrograms per cubic meter, or 1.3 to 4.5 to the negative fourth, over his or her entire lifetime, that person would theoretically have no more than a 1 in a million increased chance in developing cancer as a direct result of continuously breathing air containing this chemical. Similarly, the EPA estimates, so if you try to find that difference. Yeah, there we go. So estimates that continuously breathing the air containing 1.3 to 4.5 micrograms per cubic meter would result in not a greater in 1 than 100,000 increased chance in developing cancer in air containing 13 to 45 micrograms per cubic meter would result in not in a greater than 1 in 10,000 chance increase in developing cancer. Okay, so basically, and again, that is a cubic meter of air. And again, as fuel haulers, let me switch to this screen here. Okay, so as fuel haulers, we are outside, and the risks are much greater indoors than they are outside, because you do not have quick access to fresh air. So as fuel haulers, our risk is lower than somebody who is going to be working in a confined space in a refinery, for example. Let's see here. So if you are exposed, and again, we'll get into this is going to be part of the unloading process. If you're, you hook up, you pull up to the station, and then you take the caps off all the tanks. You hook up your vapor hose to the trailer, and then you hook it to your vapor recovery elbow and connect it to the vapor recovery tank on the ground. And then you connect your hoses to your elbow from the tank to the actual trailer, and then you release the product as you're unloading. You can sometimes see, and again, these are not completely sealed systems, as we all know, especially with the rubber O-rings that are inside these elbows tend to shrink and deteriorate over time, and other, breaks in the system, as some of the equipment that we use is older. There can be, and you can visually see it, as I have seen it multiple times, when you're doing a gas drop at whatever it is, a truck stop or a regular service station, gas station. There will be sometimes leaks in the vapor recovery system, and you can see vapors either in the sunlight or in the light from your work light underneath your trailer near your load heads, or maybe it's a street lamp. You can see the vapors, and you can also hopefully not smell them, but sometimes you can smell them. And what do you do in that situation? You get fresh air by leaving the area where the benzene is, which again, this is no different than H2S exposure in the oil field, or any other exposure to a dangerous chemical that is in the air. You move where the air is fresh, and that is by moving upwind, not downwind, but upwind of wherever you're getting exposed to, of whatever it is, benzene in this case, or gas vapors, or H2S. You move upwind, you finish the job, and then you close everything off. That's it. It's one thing if you're going to stand in front of your or yeah, if you stand in front of the vapor recovery um, hole, for lack of a better term, on your trailer, and then you just open your internals and you get that blast of gas vapors. Obviously, don't do that. But that is going to be the the gas vapors that you are experiencing while just unloading. That again can be mitigated by just moving out of the way of wherever those vapors are going. Now, again, I'm not going to guarantee that nobody is going to get cancer because that's not what life is about. I'm not even guaranteeing that I'm not going to get cancer. But there are ways to mitigate this. And again, I personally, if I smell any vapors, even if I don't see them, I just stop breathing in, move to fresh air, go on with my day. Now, is that going to guarantee, as I was alluding to, that I'm not going to get some sort of a leukemia or cancer? No, no, clearly not. But there are ways to mitigate that, and that is by paying attention, moving upwind, and waiting for the vapors to stop. So let's move on here. Let's move to this tab. Okay. And I thank you for sticking with me thus far. It's been a long video, but so this brings us to my final point, which is after we've mitigated, or we've mitigated as much as we can. And you can also bring a gas mask to work. I don't know exactly what filter you would have to wear, but you can't, you're not going to get any slack or, you might get some guff from your coworkers, let's be honest, but you're not going to get in trouble for bringing a HEPA filter or I'm forgetting what type of filter. And again, you can do this research. You can figure out, okay, what air filter can I wear that will filter out gas vapors that contain benzene? Not that hard. And you can wear that at work if you're really that concerned about it. I don't, because I'm not that concerned about it. And getting into this next point, um, I'm not going to say that people throw out the benzene thing as a red herring. In other words, that it's like it's just a distraction from what the real thing is, because some people may actually be concerned about benzene, but the reality is the vast majority of truck drivers, number one, they don't even really take care of their health, and you can as a truck driver, they just choose not to, or they're ignorant in how to, which the information's out there, so that excuse is also gone. But they don't take care of their diet, they don't take care of working out at all, they don't drink enough water, they don't get enough sleep. Now some of the sleep deprivation, that's part of the job in certain circumstances, so that it is what it is. But they just do not care about their health in general. And so I think some people, not all, but some people throw this out as, well, I don't want to do fuel hauling because I'm going to get cancer, even though they're overweight. They may even smoke on top of it. And it's just an excuse not to get into fuel hauling, versus if they actually took care of themselves on a daily basis and actually ate well, exercised, got their sleep, drank plenty of water instead of soda and all this other crap that we drink within these truck stops and gas stations, then it would be a completely different story. And most people just don't, not even just truck drivers, most people just don't care about it enough to prioritize their health. And so if you know anything about health, you also know that the number one cause of death in the US is heart disease. And that's heart related issues, whether that's heart attacks. Heart disease is primarily driven by what? A bad diet, little to no exercise, and as well as, not going to the doctor and getting your blood work done, and not actually taking preventative steps to see that you're in a rough bit of shape. But wanted to point that out because at the end of the day, your chances of actually getting leukemia, as this is going to point out here in a second, or whatever cancer that could be caused by benzene, is much, much lower of a chance than you actually dying from heart disease, which is way more common because 70% of the US is overweight. I'm sure it's higher for truck drivers. And so your chance of heart disease is going to be way, 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 way higher that you actually need to worry about. And most people just don't. So, with that being said, diatribe over. The overall lifetime risk in the United States for cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death generally, but truck drivers face vastly magnified risks. According to occupational health data, truck drivers have a 50% incidence rate of cardiovascular disease compared to 30% for the general public. The odds of dying at large scale cohort studies tracking truck driver mortality reveal that seismic, maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, heart disease is responsible for roughly 25 to 30% of all deaths in this occupation. Why the odds are so high? The job is a perfect storm of cardiovascular risk factors, prolonged physical inactivity, sitting for 11 plus hours a day, high stress, sleep deprivation, and a severe lack of healthy food options on the road. Okay, and look at that. Only 16% of truck drivers are at a healthy weight. So 84% of us are not at a healthy weight. Let's just sit there and take that into consideration for a moment. So, in contrast, benzene workers and cancer. Benzene is a known class 1 carcinogen that directly targets bone marrow, causing blood-related cancers like acute myeloid leukemia and multiple myeloma. There we go. However, the modern occupational risk is tightly regulated. Overall lifetime risk, modern versus historical. In the past, pre-1970s and 80s, industrial workers, and these are the people who are actually using benzene on a day-to-day basis, not just being slightly exposed to it, dropping gas. Industrial workers exposed to incredibly high unregulated concentrations of benzene. Example, in rubber factories or shoemaking had a highly elevated risk. Historical cohorts showed that standard mortality ratios for leukemia of 2.3 or higher, meaning that they are double the normal rate of leukemia. So in the past, they were double the normal rate of leukemia. Today, modern regulations such as OSHA limiting exposure to 1 part per million over a workday, meaning that the modern chemical refinery or offshore workers have a much lower excess risk. The odds of dying even in heavily exposed historical cohorts, so back in the day, pre-1970s and 80s, leukemia is a relatively rare cancer. An SMR, or standard mortality ratio, of 2.3 means that if in 1 in 1,000 people in the general public die of leukemia, about 2.3 in 1,000, 0.2.3 or 0.23% heavily exposed benzene workers would. And again, this is just, the EPA calculates that a lifetime continuous exposure of relatively high industrial levels of benzene increases a person's individual risk of developing cancer by roughly 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 1,000. So let's go back here. Just final thoughts. It's very clear that, yes, there are risks, and I'm not trying to say there's no risks. I'm not trying to necessarily minimize the risks, but it is very clear to me that with 84% of us being overweight as truck drivers, the chance of us getting leukemia is not the biggest concern that we should have. Just my opinion, even as a fuel hauler, just my opinion, but take that for what it's worth. Again, I'm not here to try and convince you to work in fuel hauling or not to work in fuel hauling. I'm not trying to fear monger. I'm just trying to put the information out there. And hopefully, this was helpful for you guys because at the end of the day, you have to make that decision for yourself if it's worth the risk or if it's not worth the risk. For me, it's worth the risk because, again, I'm paid far and away better than most truck drivers are as a fuel hauler. And that is, to me, a worthy trade off for an increased cancer risk. Now, what that is going to be for me specifically, again, or you specifically, it greatly depends upon how seriously you take this. If you're mitigating your risks by either bringing some sort of approved filter that will actually filter out benzene to work with you, or if you're moving upwind and you're standing where you're not, or standing outside of areas that will normally have a higher concentration of vapors or gas vapors in this case, you can mitigate the risk. That's my whole point. But there is still going to be risk, as with all things in life, or most things in life, and you just have to decide if it's worth it for you. With that being said, hopefully, again, this was helpful. If you, disagree with me and you say, "Oh, well, after this, I'm not going to be a fuel hauler anymore," cool, or say, "Hey," uh, if you say, "Hey, I am still going to be a fuel hauler," I think it's worth the risk. Great, cool. I don't particularly care either way. You just have to make that decision for yourself. And hopefully I helped that make you, or, hopefully I helped you make that decision for you today. And again, if you disagree, you agree, certainly let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you, again, have any other topics you'd like for me to cover, let me know as well. Otherwise, if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I will see you guys on the next one. Take care. God bless.